Hey everybody, and welcome to class. It's Wednesday, August 21st, and I'm the only person here. This happens. That was great. Monday we had 85% of the class in the session, and Wednesdays I know can be problematic, but we do the best we can. Anyways, here's what we got lined up for today. Number one, again, sort of as we're getting settled and everybody's getting used to all the components, I really enjoy the couple of conversations I've had with you and your classmates, and have a couple more scheduled real soon. So we're talking about the business of grapes. We were talking about that as a business enterprise, if you're growing grapes, you've got a business to run. You've got a brand to create. You may be part of a larger collective of marketing for a region, whether it's the Santa Barbara Vintners or Association or the various promotional, regional, and even national organizations in France, Spain, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, et cetera, et cetera. It's a business. There's a lot of pressure to perform and be profitable, but while at the same time ensuring that you've got a long-term market for your product. I sent out a link last week to a what did I do with it? I'll be darned. Hang on just a second. Anyways, we had a link to the growers in Spain for the people who are producing Cava sparkling wine, and they're pressuring the growers to lower the cost of goods by 30%. And what we're going to do also, I'll show you in the financial workbook what that looks like. And this is hopefully what by the end of this course you'll be finding fun, is how all this interrelates, okay? So just as a real quick review, this is the second week of the first lesson, and today we're going to talk about more production, but production from production models standpoint, meaning do you own your own winery or not? Do you even have wine made? What are the different options? Do you buy bulk wine, or do you have an estate where you own the vineyards, you own the winery, and you're completely vertically integrated? Okay, so this is where we are. I'm in the Nap Valley Wine Academy site, and remember that we're the critical thinking part of it. And I want to go through the WineBizSim calculator a little bit more, and the project that's due a week from today. Again, on the project, you're going to have this cost of goods project to turn in. You'll have up to 4 weeks after the official end of class to turn your work in and to view all the videos. The reason for this is really appreciate and really recommend staying on track, getting your work turned in on time. I will accept late work, and we've tried to make this course as flexible as we can for any kind of issues that inevitably come up for all of us, okay? So we're going to go through a bit of the financial modeling tool. And as a reminder, this is at spreadsheetserver.com. You got a document and instructions of what to do. You go to the site. Now remember, if I'm going back to work on a workbook, I'm going to sign in, all right? And then I'm going to go to where I saved my project in my favorites bar, okay? So I keep a separate folder right up here in my favorites bar, and so that I can pull up a $25 red blend, all sorts of projects that I'm working on. And don't forget that. Also, I'm not sure if I reinforce, if you're working on one computer at home and another one at work or something like that, if you want to access a project that you're working on, you'll need this URL. So when I go into my Wine BizSim projects, I go to my $25 red blend from earlier this year, okay? Remember, this URL up here at the top is what gets you back to a workbook that you're working on, okay? And then, and once you've created it, each time you close it out, it should auto save. You don't have to worry about too much, and you can go in and do it. And again, if you go in and you say, wait a minute, it's not letting me put in information, you can see over here see the no sign. All you have to do is go up and hit edit, and that'll let you go in and make changes. Okay. So again, put, as far as your project, if you're a newbie, this is all filled out. Just see if you can find a $25 red blend to use maybe as a case study, a wine that you've tried or that you might want to learn a little bit more about, and then going through the project. If you're a newbie, I don't care what the numbers look like when you turn this in. I just want to know that you're working on the project, okay? So go in and play with things. And going back to the conversation about bottom line in a cava grower in Spain, which cava is the terminology for a traditional method bottle fermented sparkling wine. Let me show you just real quick kind of how this goes, okay? So our $25 red blend is set up with 3,000 cases at $133 FOB, and our gross margin's $100,000. Now, when you're playing around, here's how you play around. If I want to do 10,000 cases, or let's say 100,000 cases, that's not unknown for cava producers. All right, I'm going to put that in, and then when I click or hit enter, all right, now you're going to see my gross margin is now $3,373,000. Okay, I want to do that. All right, and this is for a wine that's going to roughly sell at $27.62. If I want to see this price come down, I'm going to have to lower my selling price, right? Or later we'll show how you can affect it downstream through your distributor in the store and so on. But if I go ahead and knock this down, I could say, oh, I want this to be a $24.99 wine. All right. So there we go. Now look what the heck, lowering my FOB by what is that? $14 a case on 100,000 cases. Holy moly. That just cost me about $1.5 million. $1.5 million. All right, now let me go show you what's happening in the grape world with the cava growers. If I now go over to my grape cost tab, and we're playing around that our total cost of grapes for this project with our almost $2 million margin for a $25 bottle of sparkling wine. If we're paying $2,000 a ton for grapes, our margin is this, almost $2 million, right? What would happen if I lowered the cost of my grapes by 30%? Okay, so that means we need our grapes to be one. So let's see if I do these at 1,800. And you can do a whole cava. You can do the different grape varieties. You can put in grape varieties down here and so forth. So, and I like, we've got a couple of really neat projects going on. We may have a fruit wine project coming out of the Northeast, and an Italian project coming out of Italy with two of the students. Kind of fun. All right, so now we're down at 1800. Let's knock this down a little bit more and see if we can get down to about it. Okay, so now I've knocked my grade costs. I've adjusted my grade cost to $1,600. All right, and look what it did. That made me over $600,000, nearly, well over $500,000 by lowering my grade costs. All right. So this is what's fun about this program, I hope you'll find, after the intimidation and how daunting it is, but it's really kind of fun and kind of cool. So have fun with it, make a fun project. Anything you discover, any questions you have or whatever, you can go to our forum. Oh, that's right, I had this queued up, all right. So read this article and then think, what would that do to the bottom line of a small producer, of a huge producer, etc. And there are million case kava producers, so they wield a lot of leverage. They're really pushing, they're using that muscle to get the growers to accept less while they're making millions maybe. Mm-hmm. And the growers have to survive. And so how are they going to respond? Are they going to acquiesce to the cut in their profits and then start to cut their own costs? Where can they go back to lower costs? They can increase their yields. They maybe could be less careful about the selection at harvest, and so on, because they've got to earn their money. If you're running a vineyard and you take a hit on a 30%, that's pretty dang significant. Okay. And then, okay, so that was that. Second thing, I'm sending you a link to this article. We were talking about the who cares. Paul Mabry is a really, really smart guy, a really good friend. And this is an article written that actually references research that was done that's actually finding out, for the most part, consumers just don't even care about wine. And so if we're looking at the passions and the enthusiasm that we have, if you're in this class, you're not a normal consumer. Even if you're a newbie, you've got a higher, you care about different things. And actually it's really fun because one of you actually shared just recently on your, gosh darn it, I get these dang helpful things that get in my way. Christina, great to have you in the course, and like so many of us, there's the chemistry, the farming, the literature, religion and history and tradition and agriculture and all this stuff. So the challenge is actually finding out what consumers care about, and especially the consumers your market is directed towards. Okay, and so this is going to be important as we look at various production models and how wine is potentially produced, because what consumers cared about some years ago might be very different about what they care about today. And as we've discussed, what millennials, and especially millennials like my son Landon, who doesn't care about bling, who is an engineer, he's very functional, and he's one millennial. And then my older son Chase is 34, and he's Mr. Bling, and it's all about the brand and looking good and all that kind of stuff. They're both great kids, both successful. One's an engineer, one's a salesman. So that kind of sets that up. Okay, so that's the purpose of the Wine Biz Sim, and just go around and mess around with see what goes into production and what affects it. Here's another thing. Let's say that we're making $2.6 million, and the winemaker comes and says, if we had a new press, to crush the grapes, and extract the juice, we could probably, let's say we could increase our quantity of production 5%, and a new press could cost $1 million. So how do you rationalize that kind of capital expenditure? And if I go over here, this is where we take our grapes. Don't worry about the bulk finished wine. We're going to do a whole project about that, but this is for using a combination of wine you actually crush and ferment, and then blending it with other wine you may have in inventory or that you purchase, okay? But here is where a ton of your grapes are turned into juice, corresponding how many tons or how many cases of wine are you going to get out of a ton of grapes? And this varies wildly from grape variety to grape variety, based on vintage, all sorts of variables. But let's say that we use a base number, which is pretty well accepted. You can get 60 tons out of, or 60 cases out of a ton of grapes, all right? And then watch it, this is called a stepper. We're at $2.64 million, all right? I'm going to increase this up to 63 tons, all right? And we just made an additional $200,000 on our bottom line. Now, if a winemaker knows the finances in the business and comes in and says, I need a new $1 million press, well, number one, you're probably going to sell the old press, so you've got salvage value. It's business, you guys. Sell it on Craigslist. And then, so let's say maybe you can get $400,000, so you're going to spend $600,000, but you can show that each year you're going to make $200,000 more profit. Then all of a sudden you can make a good decision on whether to buy that press or not. And then it wouldn't take all that much time to write it down. You get to depreciate it. You get to write it off in your taxes as equipment and supplies and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, there comes your shiny new press, okay? So these are the kind of things that you can play around with. All right. I would ask if there's any questions, but I know there's not. So what really goes into a cost of goods is what that is about. But then also we're going to start to discuss the various models for starting a winery. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today, various production models. Who cares about the cost of goods? Well, what does the consumer think? What does the grower think? As a wine is able to achieve higher and higher price points, it's premiumization. Oh, we're adding this to the story. We got this points. We're doing this promotion and marketing. All right. Who cares about the cost of goods? I did an interview for a wine radio show yesterday. I can send you the link later if anybody cares, because sometimes people just really don't care about that. And the person who was doing the interview really wanted to believe that an $80 bottle of high-end wine, that $80 is completely justified through the cost of grapes and the cost of production. It's not. And what was interesting, he's trying to convince his dad, who drinks, I guess, $3 Chuck or whatever, but drinks very inexpensive wine and actually likes the inexpensive wines better than these expensive wines his son brings over. So his dad doesn't care, and his dad doesn't want to spend $80. And so this guy's trying to convince his dad that the wine's worth it, but dad doesn't even like the wine. Okay. So thinking about cost of goods, an enthusiast might care of knowing a little bit about it. Now, again, the guy interviewing me, unfortunately, he thought that high-end corks cost $3 each because somebody had told them that's That's their cost. And that's just unfortunately ridiculous. As somebody who knows a lot about wine, by the way, and is a good friend for a long time, I don't mean to poke fun at him. This is really just pointing out how little even really expert people know about what goes into these costs, okay? Now, of course, the producer cares a lot about cost of goods. And we're going to look at different forms of production today. An importer, exporter. When I was a buyer from 1979 to 85, I left my culinary full-time career as a chef to become a wine buyer in Atlanta, Georgia. I loved my job. God, I was having fun. What I especially loved was learning more than the salespeople and the distributors and whatever knew. And then I later became an importer. And I knew things about cost of goods. And because I knew it, I knew how much leverage I might have for negotiation of purchasing. So if you're an importer or an exporter, if you're a distributor, if you're a retail buyer, either restaurant or on or off premise, knowing about cost of goods can give you a very, very distinct buying advantage, because you know what the person trying to sell you the wine, you know what their cost of that wine, you know how that works. And so you can kind of squeeze and leverage that, all right? And that's what really great buyers do, all right? It's a business. For tasting room and wine educators, tasting room is kind of interesting because also tasting room is often responsible for training and educating the people in the organization. And that's where understanding cost of goods could be something you might care about quite a lot. But also in a tasting room and in marketing and in all of those kind of things, the knowledge of cost of goods, you want to inflate the perceived value of the product, of what's going on in the vineyard, of all that specialized equipment that's in the back, how the wine was made, where it comes from, and so on and so forth. So my friend yesterday had heard from somebody that a cork could cost $3. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. That's what, $36 a case, and a lot of people, a larger production, spend $36 for the cork, the bottle, the capsule, the box, and the label, the entire packaging. Imagine $2 Chuck, all right? That wine is available at $24 FOB Napa, all right, from the producer. And if you buy, I'm not sure where it is now, or even actually if the $24 is still legit, but just a couple of years ago, if you committed to if you committed to 25,000 cases of product, you can get $2 Chuck under your own label and whatever for $24 a case. Who would pay $36 a case just for the cork? That would be actually kind of crazy. All right. So a lot of times you'll see these little half-assed, okay, here's a bottle of Harlan, and at $8 a ton, the grapes equate to $13 a bottle. An extra long cork, $2, so here's that nonsense. A special glass bottle is more expensive than $1. Custom label, sure, $1, that's really expensive. Filling it, oak barrels, $10, and so it costs $28. That's pretty naive and pretty dumbed down. All right, now here's another breakdown that shows low and high averages, so that's kind of interesting. But again, going through the Wine Biz Sim is going to give you a real clear idea
let's go in and look at our wine just real quick because I want to take you to the end of it. Oops. All right. When you get this workbook filled out, you're actually going to be able to say, oh, how much did the grapes contribute? And what was their cost per case, and divide by 12 by bottle? How much was your production cost? What was the barrel aging? What was the cellar and storage and whatever? And the packaging, and voila, there you go. You've got your cost of goods. So anyways, that's again how all this works. Back to our regular scheduled program. All right. So critical thinking. Let's open a wine. Let's make a wine. Let's make a wine. Okay, that sounds like a great idea. What are we going to do? I don't know. I guess we got to. Do we want to build a winery? No, let's buy a winery. No, let's not have a winery. Let's go to a custom crush facility. Oh, well, but let's join a alternating proprietorship. What's that? Okay. We don't need a winery. Let's just use bulk wine and we can be in business quickly. So what I want you to do, your critical thinking through this is, how many ways can you make a wine, and what are the pluses and the minuses? Later, we're going to turn critical thinking into SWOT analysis. And that is critical thinking, meaning what are the strengths of this idea or this business or this product or this person? What are the weaknesses? So SWOT is strengths and weaknesses, all right, and that's critical thinking, and opportunities and threats. That's outside of the individual or the business or the concept or whatever, okay? And that'll be in the second half of the course. So big picture, you've got a winery somewhere. A winery has to produce it at some point. You might be a custom crush client. You may actually buy wine from a broker or get it in bulk. Then you've got to decide, how are you distributing it? Through a wholesaler or classic three-tier wine distribution. And just very quickly, the three-tier system will come up. It's 3 tiers of licensing: a licensed producer who sells to a licensed distributor, who then sells to a licensed retail store, restaurant, wine bar, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's the 3-tier system versus the many consumer direct or internet routes. So consumer direct could be a tasting room, a wine club, a winery website, or not consumer direct, but done on the internet would be you sell to somebody who sells to consumers on the internet. Okay, and if you are going the 3-tier system, then the winery sells to the distributor and the wholesaler, and then to the restaurant or the retail store. Okay? All right. So as you're playing with the wine business, and don't forget, where can you reduce costs? Can you increase your pricing? And also, we're going to talk about, when do you lose control of your product and of the pricing? All right. And then we used to do an unoaked Chardonnay demo. And the reason I want to do this is this was a simpler but less effective wine business tool. But let me kind of show you a little bit about what that looks like. So if I go to the barrel tab, all right, on our wine, I've got 50% of new oak for a $25 red blend. I can throw in another 50% of used oak. Now what I want you to do is, again, when we do this, watch our bottom line. We're at $2.8 million, and let me press enter. All right. So that decision to do half of the wine, 6 months in new oak, and then we're going to also do the other half in 6 months of used oak. That was a $400,000 hit on our bottom line, okay? Now let's say we're a Chardonnay, just for argument's sake. And we thought, you know what? We don't need no stinking oak, do we? Nah, who needs oak? And I want you to start looking around at unoaked Chardonnay, and then I want you to keep this in mind. We're making $2.425 million. I'm going to take oak out of the equation. 0 and 0 and enter. It was a $1.3 million increase in my bottom line. I can spend money on sales incentives to distributors. I can give bonuses to my winemakers. I can do advertising campaigns. I can do all sorts of things with $1.3 million. And that's for 100,000 cases of wine. That'd be $13 million if it were 1 million cases of wine. Go into stores and look for unoaked Chardonnay, look at their pricing. And if a wine from a region, whether it's Napa Valley or a California AVA or something like that, if it's unoaked, think about how much they have to spend to promote that wine and how important it is to have have people care that it's unoaked. So you're going to see catchwords, purity and this and that, blah, 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 because it's a big deal. Okay, so back to our regular. So this is how you increase and this and that, and that's the unoaked Chardonnay demo. Okay, good. I did it. All right, so again, we're here in the supply chain and the value chain. All right. So here are the different production options, and there's different variations of these and hybrids and whatever. But number one, we think of a traditional estate model. Here's my vineyards, there's my winery, we do it all. You know, here's our dog. We've been doing this, we're brand new, we just started up, or we've been doing this in our family for generations, however. The costs and the overhead and not only of dollars, but also of time and focus. And we got to run a vineyard. It's agriculture. It eats up a lot of time and attention, right? And we've got the winery, we've got the equipment and the maintenance and this and that. And plus, if you're starting new, if you're going to start the vineyard, it may be years before you have any grapes, and maybe even more years before you release a wine. So what if we opened or bought a winery and we buy the grapes, which actually can be cheaper and be better quality than if you're an estate. That's true. So the popularity of this is we got a winery and it's a physical structure, so people can come, we can do events, we can do all this. There will be vineyards around us. But we're not going, we've got a lot more operating capital, a lot less debt, a lot more focus because we're not doing the winery or the vineyards, okay? And you look at more and more modern, both large and small wineries around the world, you'll see this happening. The next production option is it's a winery, but the winery is shared by a number of different owners. So this is called an alternating proprietorship or an AP. And the advantage of this is it's like, hey, I know a couple guys, they've been getting their wine custom crushed. We'll get to that in a minute. And they actually want to start to take on their production. Let's all get together. We jointly buy the land. We jointly buy all the equipment and whatever. And then we share as sort of like a production co-op. And there's actually businesses starting all over the world where people are building a winery and then leasing it to other wineries to use as an alternating proprietorship. So there's kind of a landlord, and then they let you buy into the AP. When an alternating proprietorship works well, they are awesome. Rock and roll, you've got a lot of people working together, but it can go south real quick when you got people fighting over using the crusher or this piece of equipment or this or that. And the reason they called it an alternating proprietorship is each participating winery has to have their own licenses and permits. And effectively what you're doing is when you're using a facility and equipment, it's under your license and permit. When you're done, it's now being operated under the next company's license and permit, okay? Custom crush. This is contract production. These are facilities that maybe all they do is custom crush, but a lot of wineries have excess capacity under their permit, and so to make best use of their production capabilities, they make whatever wine they need, and if there's any wiggle room at the top, they can make wine for other people also, and it's really good for cash flow and so on and so forth. But custom crush is where an individual contracts with a production facility, and it can be totally hands-off. You could go in and negotiate and say, I want to do this, and here's the wine I want to make, and they take it from there. They source the grapes, they make the wine, they issue all the work orders, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the hands-off custom crush. But also custom crush might be the ability for yourself or using a consulting winemaker and actually purchase or contracting for the grapes, but the winery has to purchase them. Because if you're making wine under a custom crush agreement, you are a wholesaler, you are not the producer. The producer of record is the facility that's actually producing the wine, and they also have to do the payment and transaction with the grape grower and so forth. So I could go in and say, hey, I want to make the wine, I want to use your facilities, how much is it going to cost? I'm going to negotiate the grapes, so the facility has to pay for them, right, and do that. What's this going to cost me? And I'm going to issue all the work orders. I'm going to do it all myself. And this is how Paul Meyer, Screaming Eagle started with a custom crush facility, okay? And a lot of people, what they'll do is actually start out with a custom crush facility, and maybe they've got contacts or some great grapes or this or that, and then they start to build it up. And then as they get into cash flow, then they purchase the land and build their winery. And this is what Paul Meyer did. This is what Screaming Eagle, this happens a lot all around the world. And so this isn't a California thing, but you don't have custom crush facilities in a lot of regions and so forth. Bulk wine simply refers to fermented, relatively finished, you could still do more to it, but it's fermented, it's done, and it could be really expensive. Don't think bulk wine means cheap, all right? Get that out of your head now. And then finally, so bulk wine is bought and sold, and we're going to do a bulk wine project next week. You're going to start that. And then shiners are wines that are excess or purpose produced that are in a bottle and have a cork or a screw cap or some sort of closure, but there's no label. And that's why they're called shiners, because they're all shiny. And the way shiners work is I've got an order or a contract to fulfill for somebody around the world or with this group of stores or restaurant. I can actually go to the shiner market and find product that's bottled, ready to go. So this is also fast. Most quick to market is shiners. You can have your permits and this and that, go buy the product, have it labeled and get it off. So you can actually, and it is a vibrant market. It's quite an art, as is bulk wine. So this is your fastest to market. This is second fastest to market. these, a lot of dependencies on facilities and whatever as to how quickly you can get things to market. And certainly the traditional estate it takes the longest time to get started up, to have your money invested and be waiting for a return on investment. Right? So just a real quick recap. You got your winery, you got your vineyards, blah, blah, blah. There you go. And this is King Estate. And look at all the different vineyards and different vineyard blocks that they've got in their beautiful place in Oregon. You're going to get a copy of this also. These are more technical or legal language for different types of premises and bonding and licensing and storage versus this and that. So a bonded wine premises, you're allowed to make wine, blend wine, treat it, store it, bottle it, pack it, boom, all right? A bonded winery then have a permit under the FAA to produce wine. And a bonded wine cellar, let's say that you had some excess production and you're doing really good, and you just got done bottling and you need to store some product, but you don't have room in your winery. You have to store the product in a tax-paid and permitted facility or warehouse, okay? So that's what this is, all right? A couple of examples: winery only, no vineyard. This was years ago that the Camus family, Joe Wagner, son of Charlie, created a brand called Meiomi, built it into the largest selling Pinot Noir in the world, sold it for $315 million, and there were no vineyards. It was just the winery only. So again, you've got to really think about what's your vision and mission and goals with your business. Does your consumer segment care about having vineyards or not? And again, fewer and fewer consumers care about that. It used to be a very big thing. It's not so much, or it is still a very big thing, but for a lot less percentage of the market care about that. This is then a technical explanation of alternating proprietorship. Again, we'll send this out. Custom crush, and keep in mind the person that's contracting for the production has to hold a wholesale permit. Now, in this area, this is where gray areas come up. There were a number of people who wanted to do custom crush, but dang it, they wanted their name, Tim's Wine Cellar on the back of the label, but it's got to be the name of the custom crush facility or the permit holder. So what people were experimenting with, and I think this is, I'm not sure if this has been settled or not, but somebody pretty smart thought, oh, what if I formed a new company, an LLC or a corporation or a partnership with the custom crush facility, and then we got our own permits under this new company's name, and then this is sort of like a modified alternating proprietorship, except you're contracting for somebody to produce the wine for you, and so then you could name the company Tim's Winery, and then if we jointly produced it, and I had the permits for Tim's Winery, but there's a whole number of issues that have come up around this, and then also some legal issues, something called tied house law. If you hold a wholesale distribution license, there are restrictions on what you can and can't do in production or in retail sales and that kind of stuff, okay? So anyways, there you go. Bulk wines, again, don't think cheap. Some very expensive wines are made by really smart people who know and learn about the bulk wine starting. For anybody who knows Cameron Hughes, we'll talk about this a number of times as a business model. Cameron Hughes, many years ago, didn't have enough money to make a wine. He went to a bulk wine brokerage, tasted samples of Napa Valley Cabernet, put together a trial blend and made 2 bottles and asked them, could you hold enough of this wine so I can make 10,000 cases of it? Could you hold that for 30 or 60 days or something? They said, okay. And then he took his 2 bottles and he went to Costco. This is back when it was easier to wade through the Costco buyers. And he said, here, why don't you try this? This is a Napa Valley Cabernet. It's going to sell for $9.99 a bottle, $7.99 a bottle. They said, wow, how much of this you got? I said, I can get you 10,000 cases. They get, no kidding, sign us up. That's great. Sign this purchase order. Thank you very much. We'll have this in about 90 days for you. And then he took his purchase order and he went to a bank. He said, I've got a purchase order signed by Costco for this amount. Can I get a loan using this as, collateral? And they went, sure, and gave him the money. Then he went back to the bulk wine company and said, let's go. He bought it with the money that he got on the loan from the purchase order. That's cool. I like those stories. And then shiners are this, okay, just ready to go. You buy them. Usually the company you buy them for, you give them the labels, they slap them on, you're in business. You can literally, if you've already got your permits and everything, you can identify wine you want, you can get the labels produced and whatever, and as quickly as you can turn it around, you can have a wine ready for market in a nanosecond. By the way, also bulk wines and shiners are how a lot of wineries respond to as quickly as possible to short or new term opportunities like rosé. It's just exploded, and you're sitting around, oh, we should make a rosé. Oh my gosh, well, we're going to have to plant the vineyards. No. We're going to go out, we're going to be really smart, we're going to buy good bulk wine, or maybe even identify shiners and just put our labels on it. Now remember, you've got to maintain your brand promise and image and everything else in doing that. But that's how the business is done. All right. So everybody gets to go to the TTB website. Yay. This is the Tax Trade Bureau, formerly known as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And I'm going to start directing you there. It is a world of information and permits and licenses. It's got educational videos. It's got market information for all across the U.S., tax tables, export markets, contacts, who you can get in touch with to get your wines to Indonesia or China or Bali or wherever you want to go with your export business, okay? So that's what we're going to do. All right, so there we have it, and that should be plenty of stuff to chew on for the next week. I will send this out, and off we go into the next portion of the program. I hope you're having fun. Let me know if you're not, and enjoy this material. Thanks.